Okay, let's start again. Let me just make sure that you guys can hear me. Okay, my IT guy just said, okay, sorry about that little complication there. Ready to go. Okay, so thanks again for joining me. This is the 5 fundamentals of mental toughness in tennis. I'm Dr. Greg Steinberg. And this webinar is sponsored by the International Tennis Psychology Association, the IATP. They have a website that we'll talk about a little later called Mastering Tennis Psychology. So I hope you will learn some great tips about the mental game. If you're a player, it'll help you play better under pressure. If you're a teacher, it will help you teach better. So there's going to be a lot of tips. And as well as tips, it's going to be a lot of application. So it's not just, let's say, research. It's all about you having a better mental game. But let me start just telling you a little something about myself. That's me. Yes, back in the 70s, I played tennis, and I played on the high school team. I played in Southern California in all the tournaments. I was ranked. So I experienced all that tennis pressure, right? I also played on the high school team for 3 years as number one. So I felt a lot of pressure, and it really left a big impact on me. And then I went to college, UCSB, and I wanted to understand how people could handle this pressure. So I studied psychology. I went to Florida State. I got my master's in sports psychology at Florida State, and then I got my PhD at the University of Florida in sports psychology. And everybody asked me, who do I root for, Florida State or University of Florida? Well, whoever's winning that year, I usually root for. But based on that, I also work with a lot of teams, tennis teams, young athletes, professional tennis players. One of my favorite teams was Vanderbilt. I don't know if you know Ken Flack. He won the gold medal in doubles with his partner Seguso. He won the U.S. Open. He won the Wimbledon. So I worked with his team, and they went to the NCAA championship. So I learned so much from him and other teams. And really, that's what I want to share with you tonight, what I learned from all my experiences in the field of sports psychology, because I've also been teaching at Austin Peay State University for 25 years. So I've been in the field for a long time, and I want to share with you those experiences. So let me first tell you that I always get the question, as a sports psychologist, what's more important, the physical game or the mental game? And really, what's the difference between what makes a great tennis player and why do some players never make it to the top? Well, this is what I say. I have talent, you have talent, everybody has talent, but some players have thoughts and emotions that push their talents down, where other players have thoughts and emotions which raise their game under pressure. And I just want to share with you something I do in my class, and this is my only prop for tonight, and it's an orange, right? So I asked my class these questions. So level 1 question: if I squeeze this orange, what comes out? Orange juice, right? Of course, orange juice always has to come out. Level 2 question: why? Why does orange juice come out? Because that is what is inside. Level 3 question: what have you put inside? If you put in fear and negativity and doubt, that's what comes out when you get squeezed, because we all get squeezed on the tennis court, whether it's playing for your high school team, playing in the club championship, or just with your buddies. We always get squeezed. That's the human condition. But if you put in joy and peace of mind and confidence, that's what comes out when you get squeezed. And all the great players put in the right juice. And so the idea is tonight, it's my goal to share with you how to put in the right mental juice and really emotional juice so that you can raise your game under pressure, so that you can, if you're a teacher, so that you can show your students how to raise their game under pressure and be the best player they can be. And it's really about developing positive, effective habits. And we are going to show you how to develop those positive, effective habits throughout the night. But to illustrate the 5 keys related to these positive, effective habits and what the webinar is all about tonight, to me, I think there's 5. Now, of course, there's a lot of mental game issues, but I've condensed them into 5 main ones, okay? The first one is know yourself, self-awareness, which is the fundamental of anything related to the mental game, because you have to know yourself to move in the right direction and avoid the wrong direction. The second fundamental is confidence, and confidence is always a choice, and we'll talk more about that. The third fundamental is control your anxiety and really harness it. The fourth fundamental is focus, be in the moment, and we're going to talk a lot about that. And the fifth fundamental is staying inspired to practice. Now, let me tell you, I'm going to go through a lot of these, but this webinar is live. Have you been able to tell that? Because at the start, we didn't have sound. We had to fix that. It's live. And the cool thing about it is you can ask me questions. And so I'm going to stop in about 10 minutes. And if you have any questions, I'm going to try to address some of your questions. There's a lot of people on this webinar, so I'm not sure if I can get to everyone's question, but I also have my email on the webinar, so you can ask me later on. But let's move forward and talk about the first fundamental, self-awareness. Now, if you're like me and you're a big tennis fan, you saw this match, Naomi Osaka versus Coco Gauff, 3rd round at the US Open, right? Did Naomi play amazing? I mean, she was amazing. She was hitting winner after winner after winner, and she won the match easily, right? And she said she was getting prepared for this match. She knew it was a big match, and she knew Coco Gauff was, she was the teen sensation. So she was getting ready for it, and she did. She got pumped up, and she played amazing. She hadn't won a tournament since the Australian Open, and this was probably her best event since then. Well, guess what happened? She lost the next match, right? So what does that tell me? Well, let me go to tell you what I would do. The secret to self-awareness is knowing why you played your best and why you played your worst. So the idea is, if you, with Naomi, if we would ask her, why was she playing so great that match? She probably would have said something like, my intensity level was really high. I was really excited. I knew it was a great match. I had respect for her. Whatever it was, that's the why. And then we have to ask her again, why did you lose the next round, right? And the idea is that if she knows why she lost the next round, and she would know the difference, then she could move in the right direction and avoid the wrong direction. And so let me go back a step and say, as a sports psychologist, I don't use any assessments, because if you think about it, Rafael Nadal is totally different than Federer. They had different personalities. So why take a personality test? It's really about you. how you can harness that in with you, that power within you, and move in the right direction. So you have to know your why you play your best and why you play your worst, and then you can move in the right direction. And so the secret to awareness is know the why factor, know why you have anxiety, know why you're totally confident, know why you get inspired to practice or compete. When you know the why, then you can move forward in the right direction. And so that's the secret. And that's why I put it as the number one fundamental, because it relates to the secret to mental toughness. It's awareness. Knowing yourself basically will allow you to move in the right direction. So I would ask you, think about a time when you were at your best, right? In the flow or in the zone, whatever you want to call it. And, write it down. This is what I do with all my tennis players I work with. Write down the match, write down the date, write down the player, and then write down, what were you thinking? What were you feeling? What happened beforehand? Try to get at those emotions and those thoughts and the why. And then look at sometimes you choked. Why did you choke? And then figure out what was like one main difference. And you might find it's anxiety. Maybe it's confidence. Maybe it's focus. Whatever it is, the secret is for you to figure out the why. And once you figure out the why, you move in the right direction. So to me, that's the key fundamental. So let's move to another topic, which is confidence is a choice. And let me tell you a story about Serena Williams when she's playing doubles with her sister Venus, right? They were great. They won a lot of matches together. Well, one day, Venus is like, not caring about the match and kind of doing it half-heartedly. And Serena said, look, we come here to win. We practiced, we prepared, and I'm going to win. And you're on my team, and we are going to win. Total, amazing, positive self-talk, and they won the match. And the thing is, confidence is a choice. One of the reasons that makes Serena Williams so great, maybe the greatest tennis player of all time in the women's field, a lot of people have said that, is because she chose to be confident. She chooses to be confident. And let me just say this. It's hard sometimes to choose to be confident. Sometimes your game takes the train south and you stink for a week and you're like, where's my game? I have no idea where my forehand went. You can still choose to be confident. You can still say things that are positive, think things that are positive, act positively. And so the idea is that the secret is always remember confidence is a choice. But let me also go into things like we have peaks and valleys, right? And the secret is when you choose to be confident and you're in that little valley, then you're going to get right out of that valley and get back on top of your game. But the problem is when you don't choose to be confident and you freak out, you overthink, you change your technique, whatever it is, then you get into a downward slump. And that's what's really problematic. So the secret is when you're in that little mini slump, that downward slide, choose to be confident and you'll get right out of that. Now, of course, that's easier said than done. So I want to give you some techniques to choose to be confident and how to stay confident. And there's really three main ones. What you say, what you think, and we'll talk about related to imagery, related to that, and how you act. So what you say is called self-talk. Okay, that's what we say in sports psychology. And it's easy to be negative, right? It's easy to get on yourself. Oh, you stink. You're the worst. That becomes a bad habit, right? And so when you get squeezed, that negativity is going to come out. So you've got to create these positive mental habits like we talked about before, right? So one of the best ways is with this best friend's journal. And what I mean by that is, what a best friend would do? He would compliment you. Well, a best friend's journal is every day write down one positive self-statement and put it in your bag. And look at that before you play. Whatever it is, the idea is that you're creating this positive self-talk and it becomes a habit. Now, some people already do that. Some people have a tough time saying positive stuff. They're like into this negative mental tape, right? Well, here's another way to get rid of that negativity. It's called the rubber band technique. You tie a rubber band around your wrist. Every time you say a negative thought or have a negative image, you snap it just hard enough to where, you could feel it. And then you replace it with a positive. Of course, you do that in practice. And then over time, you are going to replace the negativity with positivity. It works. It's really effective. It's really called classical conditioning, but it's really powerful. And so I would try that. If you have a habit of being negative and it's really hard for you not to be negative, try the rubber band technique. So let's move on to the next one. It's imagery, or people call it visualization. Now Novak says, and he said this a bunch of times, he uses a lot of imagery, and he thinks that's one of his main kind of mental keys that he uses. Well, how can you use imagery like Novak and all the other great players to help you play better tennis? Well, a great way to do it is called a golden nugget book. Right? So if you watch Wimbledon, he won Wimbledon against Roger Federer, and he fought off some match points, and maybe he could, in his book, write down a couple key points. And he has maybe some of that imagery in his mind of how he hit a great forehand winner, or, hit an ace, whatever, under pressure conditions. That's the idea of a golden nugget book, is you, at those key moments that you really played brilliantly, you put in your golden nugget book and you put it in your bag, and you look at those golden nuggets kind of like in your back pocket when you need to, because we all know during a match, we can get negative. And so if you look at that positive, the golden nugget book, it can create those positive images. Another way to use imagery, which a lot of athletes do, a lot of tennis players do, is they use it as preparation before a match. So the player probably going to play, and you visualize going through the match, hitting great shots, but not just hitting great shots, but, acting positive and thinking positive and having a great attitude. And so the idea is you're preparing yourself for that pressure, right? When you get squeezed. And everybody says when they use imagery, it's almost like when they get to that moment, they've already been there. So it's a really powerful technique. It's a fundamental, and that's why we're talking about it tonight. The other one is in a pre-shot routine. So a pre-shot routine, everybody knows, I'm sure, is what they do beforehand. So like before your serve or before serving return, right? So let's say serving return. You're in your, you're kind of doing your rhythm, right? And you're waiting for the serve to be hit. You can image the serve hitting to the right side of the box and what you're going to do, or the left side of the box and what you're going to do. Again, it's preparing yourself to hit great shots with positive imagery. Let me just say this. All the great athletes, all the great tennis players use imagery. It's a key fundamental that you must use, keep on using. It must be part of your mental package. It's one of the key fundamentals that if you listen to any pro athlete, tennis, baseball, golf, they all use it. So I highly encourage you to use imagery if you're not using it all the time. So with that being said, let me just talk also about what not to do. I had to pick on Nick a little bit tonight, right? Because he got that 16-week suspension from the Cincinnati debacle with the ref. Well, let me just talk a little about Nick. Nick has amazing talent. We all know that. One of the best serves in the game, if not the best serve, amazing touch. But like I said at the start of the webinar, sometimes people have emotions and thoughts that push their talents down. Well, that's Nick, I hate to say. And we've all seen it when he's playing bad or things he like, not necessarily when he's playing bad. Sometimes when he doesn't think it should go his way, he starts acting and you can see it's just like negativity's oozing from his body, right? And the idea is when negativity oozes from your body, you start thinking negative, you lose confidence, all that stuff. How we act basically impacts our emotions, right? And that is greatly affecting Nick. But if you look at some other great ones. One of my favorites, Bjorn Borg, right? He was in my day, one of my favorites. I actually had that picture in my room in high school. Bjorn was like known as the Iceman, right? He was so calm. He always acted calm. Well, Roger's just like that too, Roger Federer. And, you know, when you act calm and collected, you feel calm and collected. The pressure almost bounces off. Where Nick is acting all chaotic and it's seeping in, and he has those emotions. So how we act greatly influences our thoughts and our emotions. And so it's a key fundamental. If you strut your stuff and you act confident, you're going to feel confident. If you act calm and collected and cool, you're going to be cool under pressure. So how you act is a key fundamental. We actually know this in science. For instance, I tell my students, if you sit up and you act confident during a test, you release hormones that make you feel confident. So there's this mind-body connection. And so it's huge. So acting confident is one of the key variables to building confidence. But let me just talk a little bit about the course. You know, we're talking tonight about the 5 fundamentals, and we're just touching upon it just a little bit, right? We only have, you know, this is probably going to be an hour. And if you go to Mastering Tennis Psychology, you can get a free ebook. There's a free bunch of free videos because you can look at one section. There's 6 sections there dealing with self-awareness, anxiety, confidence, concentration, motivation, how to practice. And because you're on the webinar, you can use the promo code tennis199 and get it for half off. And if you have any questions, you could always email me. But you know, you could just go to the site and get a free ebook. And it's basically the site is sponsored by the IATP. So again, it goes into so much detail because every section has a bunch of videos, a bunch of articles, a bunch of applied exercises. And then the idea is that once you take the course, you can get a certificate from the IATP, stating that you have taken the course and passed it. So let me just stop here for a minute because this is live, and I want to see if anybody has any questions. So Kevin asks, when thinking or acting confidence, can an athlete fake it until they make it? Exactly. You fake it. Really, I love this. There's another comment that I love. It's fake it till you become it. Because if you keep on faking it, eventually you become it. If you keep on faking confidence, you're going to feel confident. If you keep on faking being cool and collected, eventually you will be cool and collected under pressure. So you fake it till you become it. It's a true phenomenon. It's a psychological principle. So let me stop and answer a few other questions, and then we'll move on. Because again, this is what's great about this webinar, right? It's live. You can ask me any questions you want. And again, if I don't answer them or you don't think of them tonight, you can always email me at, I think I got my email up there at mentalrules24@msn.com. So, I got another question. Which type of imagery is better, internal or external? So let me address that a little bit. Internal is seeing it through your own eyes. External is also called third person, seeing it like you're on a TV screen. I didn't really go into that because we know really whatever you prefer is best. So if you like seeing, doing imagery through your own eyes, it's great. Third person, seeing yourself on a TV screen, it's all good. And whatever you prefer, some athletes prefer both. Some tennis players prefer both types of imagery. So it really depends on you. So Sean asks, what if you suffer from anxiety? Well, that's the next section. So I tell you what, let me address this next section. And if you have a specific question, I will address it. Okay, Sean? And again, keep on asking questions. And I'll stop in about 10 more minutes and address some of your other questions, because I know you're probably thinking of questions as I'm talking. So the next section is controlling your anxiety. And if you saw the US Open, Bianca Andreescu looked cool, calm, and collected. Like she's 19. She looked like she was a veteran of 10 years. You know, she beat Serena Williams, and she played amazing. And she she played amazing under intense pressure. I mean, it was pretty impressive if you saw that match. And she played really, really well. And let's talk a little bit about her mental game. She has said she meditates. Let me talk a little bit about dealing with anxiety, and then I'm going to talk about meditation and how important it is and why it helped her. Well, when you deal with anxiety, you got to deal with it, the heart, the feelings, and the head, the thinking. So let me talk about meditation. It deals kind of with the heart, okay? And what I mean by that is the emotions. So meditation is a skill. It's really called the relaxation response. When you meditate, you learn a skill. Just like in practice, you learn how to hit a forehand or a serve or a volley. That's a skill. Meditation and the relaxation response is a skill that you learn. The cool thing about it is that the relaxation response is stronger than the anxiety response. So let me explain how that works. If you're a young athlete and you go to a tournament and you say, just relax, just relax, just relax, you can't, because anxiety is really strong. It's powerful. It overwhelms you. But if you've learned the skill of relaxation, it's actually stronger than anxiety and it wins out. But again, you have to practice it. So let me just explain really quickly how you can do it. It doesn't matter if it's at night or in the morning, but take 5 minutes, put on some nice, calming music, close your eyes, right? And image your toes relaxing, and then your calves, and then your thighs, and then move all the way to the top of your head. And then once you've done that, you just kind of just say, relax, your neck, whatever. And you move all the way up to the top of your head. And it could take 3 minutes. As you breathe out, you say relax, or say a word like smooth or calm. And that's just a great way to meditate. You just say like a mantra. And then you could take that mantra like cool or smooth or calm and bring that into your pre-shot routine, like before you serve. And you will feel calm, cool, and collected because you use that. And I guarantee you that's one of the reasons why Bianca looked like she was so composed under pressure, because she's been meditating for so long. Another great example is Tiger Woods, right? Different sport, but he's learned meditation as a young boy. And, when he got to the tour, he was cool, calm, and collected under pressure. So again, anyone can learn the relaxation response. It's a skill. It's a fundamental skill that you must learn. In sports psychology, so I've been teaching sports psychology for 25 years. At the start of every class, we meditate for about 5 minutes. And so the students, they love it. And they start realizing the benefits. It helps them to sleep, helps them to study, but it also helps you under pressure, like in tennis. So it's just a great fundamental skill. Let me talk about, so that's the heart. But the head, there's a lot of ways to deal with the head, but it's really labeling your emotions. The idea is that what could be seen as anxiety provoking could also be seen as exciting, right? Or a challenge. Now, we all know who that is, Billie Jean King. She wrote a book called Pressure is a Privilege. And what she means is, if you're in the finals of Wimbledon, it's a privilege to be there, enjoy it, see it as exciting as a challenge. And that's really powerful, because anxiety can be harnessed. It can make you think better, make you run faster, can make you focus if you harness it in the right direction, if you label it like a challenge, if you label it as exciting. So again, the way you change your thinking, your mindset, will change the way you feel. And instead of feeling anxious and all, tight and, all nervous, you could feel excited and joyful. And that's what Billie Jean King was saying. Pressure is a privilege. So let me go on to another fundamental. I had to talk about Rafa, right, tonight. Probably, and people might say Novak is at the same level, but probably the most mentally tough tennis player, maybe of all time, right? I don't know all his secrets. I've read a lot about him, seen biographies. But one thing that jumps out to me is that He says he plays every point with the same intensity. So the first point and match point is played at the same intensity. So let's say, on a scale between 1 and 10, 10 being totally amped up, 1 being flat, he doesn't go from like 3 when the start of the match, and then, when the big points, he moves it to a 9 or 10. He starts, let's say, at a 9, and he stays at a 9 the whole time. Why is that key? Well, if you are basically your intensity level is at a 9, you're not thinking about score. You're totally about the process. And you're not about outcome. You're about the process, playing every point with the best intensity. And we see that every time we watch him. Every point is so important to him, right? We see it. Well, what happens is if he lost the last game, he could get distracted if he's thinking about outcome. Or if he needs to win the next 2 games, he could get nervous because he's thinking about the future. That can be distracting. But if you're totally focused on the moment, if you're totally engaged in the moment, and you're all about the process, and your intensity level is at a 9, you're totally in that moment. You're focused. And that's why I think one of his keys and what makes him so great is that he uses that mental strategy. Another key is a post-shot routine. So we all play bad. We all make mistakes. We hit easy volleys into the net. Well, you got to get rid of that baggage, right? It's like a bag of weighted bricks. It weighs you down. And if you bring it to the next point and make another mistake and then another mistake, you keep on bringing that bag of bricks. And so you need a mechanism to let it go. And one of the easiest things to do is, let's say you just dumped an easy volley into the net. You just brush it off. You literally brush it off like your leg, and you say next point. And by doing that, it's like a mechanism that lets you go. Remember we talked about positive effective habits? This is a positive effective habit. You just brush it off, say next point, and you let it go. If you don't do something like that, you're going to carry that baggage. It's hard to let it go. There's a lot of ways to have a post-shot routine. I'm just, doing it quickly. But the secret is figure out some mental mechanism. And usually it needs to be like a physical thing with like a statement like next shot or, be here now or something like that to allow you to be in the moment. So let me talk about one other thing which relates to that point. We're all multitaskers, right? We do 5 things at once. We're on I bet some of you are watching your phone right now while you're watching the webinar, whatever it is. Well, we become our habits. When we practice being distracted, we become distracted, right? And so when I'm working with a college athlete and he's having a problem focusing, I say, hey, when you're in class, does your mind wander when the professor's talking about things you don't like? Oh, yeah, my mind wanders all the time, that athlete would say. I say, well, you're practicing being distracted. So when you get on the tennis court, guess what happens? Your mind wanders. But if you're in the class and your professor's talking about something really stupid, but you're totally engaged, you're practicing being in the moment so that when you get to the tennis court, you're practicing being in the moment, totally engaged. So if you practice being distracted, you become distracted. If you let your mind wander in class, it will wander on the court. It doesn't have to be class. It could be at a business meeting. It could be at home. It doesn't matter. But if you're practicing letting your mind wander, guess what? Your mind will wander. So let me stop right here and see if there's some other questions that I could address for you. So someone asked me about breathing and meditation, or I'm just going to paraphrase. Yeah, the idea is when you're meditating, and there's a lot of ways to meditate, but when you breathe out, to me, in your mind, you should say a word. So you breathe out, and then the idea is that when we're under pressure, we typically breathe fast, right? It's the fight or flight response, and almost like we forget to breathe. So when you meditate, you learn to take some nice deep breaths, and you'll bring that onto the tennis court. So that's one of the other keys for meditation. It kind of teaches you how to make deep breaths. Let me just see what else, if you have any questions. Again, if You could always email me at mentalrules24@msn.com if you have other questions. Let me just see. There's 2 ways to ask questions in the open questions, but I don't see anybody. I just see in the chat box. Again, that's why this is live. It's not recorded. We're not sending you a recording that I did a year ago. It's live right now. That's why you had a few mistakes at the beginning, but when you get the link, you could just fast forward that, so it's no big deal. And then, because I know some of you couldn't hear at first, and now we're fine. But again, hey, you can ask me any question you want. So that's what's so cool about this broadcast. So I'm going to go on to the next. And if you have any comments or questions, again, feel free to ask me anything you want. It doesn't have to be on the topic. It could be on anything, right? Anything you want to know about sports psychology or the mental game related to tennis or anything, feel free to ask me. So let me talk a little bit about staying inspired to practice. If you look at the greats, they are about winning. They are about winning championships. We got 19 versus 20 majors right there, right? And they want to win majors. We get that. But if you look at Rafa as an example, he's always said when he walks on the tennis court, his main goal is to learn something. Look how much his serve improved over time. I mean, amazing, right? He's always trying to get better. So it's not just about winning. If you went to practice and it was always about winning, you would burn out or you wouldn't be as inspired. But if you walk on the tennis court and you have a growth mindset, and to you, it's about learning one thing today, it's always about getting better on one thing, you're going to be inspired. Roger said the same thing. He's always out there trying to improve. And that's why he does. He gets better just like everyone else. I mean, granted, he started amazing. But the idea is that, if you have a growth mindset, it's not just about winning. It's about improving, self-improvement. We know the combination of both is what allows you to achieve your potential. If your focus is all about winning tournaments, you're probably going to burn out. You might not like practice as much, and then you're going to feel nervous in competition. But if your focus is about improving as well as winning, and it's a combination of both, which it is for these 2 guys, Roger and Rafa, then you can stay inspired to get better because they both are still inspired to practice and get better, which is amazing. It's amazing for us as tennis fans to see the level of tennis on these 2 and Novak too. But the idea is that these top 3 are just getting better and better. It's crazy because they have a growth mindset and they also want to win. That's true, but it's a combination of both. So let me just stop here and see if there's any other questions I could answer for you in regards to, let's see. Okay, so Michael asks, should players change their breathing on the court? I'm not sure what that means, but what I would say is be aware of your breathing, because under pressure, you're going to breathe faster and it's going to make you more nervous. So if you're aware of your breathing and you've meditated, you breathe slow, you're going to get calm. So that's an important concept. And then he also asks, or just use self-talk. I would say in the pre-shot routine, let's say before you serve or before you hit a return, you should, do your breathing, say a positive thought, and do an image. A routine is not just about like bouncing the ball, let's say twice before the serve. It's creating a bubble around you, like a little bubble that blocks out all the distraction and pressure, so that when you have the right thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, you will bring your best to the table. So let me address Gregory's question. How does an athlete get refocused after losing it? Well, that's a hard question because everybody's unique. But what I would say is, again, if you've lost your focus, you need like a post-shot routine, brush it off and say this point. And you could say something like, let go of the past. the idea is the reason why they're focusing on the past and the score and their mistakes, and that's why they're not in the present. So they got to let go of the past to be engaged in the moment. Travis asks, at what age would you start teaching athletes sports psych? Well, that's a really good question. I think just like learning a forehand at the age of 5, you could teach them to say positive stuff, right? It could be simple, make sure they're acting positive, having fun, smiling, enjoying themselves at 5. They're not stressed out. You can see it. They're not, 5-year-olds can get anxious, especially if their parents are putting pressure on them. Maybe not 5, but let's say 10, whatever. And you can see it. So acting joyful, smiling, saying positive stuff, all that stuff is part of the mental package, right? You could tell them, visualize where you want to serve, and that can help. The earlier you do it, the better you get at it, because it's a skill. And we all know with any skill, the more you practice, the better you get at it. So let me address Kevin's question. And Kevin's question says, as a high school basketball coach, you told us that good loser is still a loser. That never sat well with me, and I quit the team. Yeah, let me just go back to some coaches they're trying to do their best, right? They might say the wrong stuff. It's out of tradition. Sometimes you got to take that with a grain of salt. But the thing about losing, it's funny. I was reading Andre Agassi's autobiography called The Open, right? I think it's called The Open, and or something like that. He says the pain of losing was greater than the thrill of winning. To me, that didn't sit well, because I know some athletes say that, but then they lose the joy. And he says that in his autobiography. He hated tennis. He hated tennis. Even though he was great, he hated it because the agony of defeat for him was better than the thrill of victory. A good loser is okay if you're learning from that. And if it's all about winning for you, you're going to hate tennis. You're going to hate your sport. It can't be all about winning. It has to be like this growth mindset. It has to be about getting better. Along with winning, there's nothing wrong with focusing on winning, but it has to be with self-improvement. And the combination is going to make you raise your game. Let me address a couple other questions. Rodolfo asked, how can a player, junior or adult, that has developed the mental habit of being too results oriented begin to focus more on their process? Well, again, that's a bad habit. When it's all about winning, all about results, it's a bad habit. And you have to basically talk about how the process will get you there. I'll give you another example about the process. If you're in the States, this name, Nick Saban. He's the coach at the University of Alabama. He's the football coach, right? He's probably one of the greatest football coaches of all time. His mantra is the process. He says, look, we can't control the other team. We can only control what we do, the moment, the intensity, just like Rafa. And the outcome has to happen. And that's the secret. You can only play your best in the moment, and let's say be engaged in the moment, be joyful in the moment, play your best in the moment, and let the outcome happen. And then, as Nick Saban has said, that's the best way to win, because when you control what you can control and focus on that, you're going to more likely win. When you focus on the uncontrollables, it stresses you out and you're more likely to lose. So Rafa gets it right. Nick Saban gets it right. It's all about the process. So let me see if there's any other questions. So I have a question. How can we help athletes who have higher anxiety to harness this more positively? So that's a really good question. So the idea is that anxiety is really an energy source that you can channel in the right direction. Like I said, it can make you focus better, think better. The best way to channel it is when you label it as a positive, like exciting. So anything can be anxiety provoking, any situation, or it can be exciting. You're playing the best player at your club. It can be, what if I lose 6-0, 6-0? Then it's exciting. Or you could see it as a challenge. I get to play the best player at the club. I'm going to see how good I am compared to him or her. And the idea is when you see it as exciting, as a challenge, you harness that in the positive. And that's what great athletes, great tennis players do. So let me just see again if there's any other questions. You can always email me your questions at mentorrules24@msn.com. Especially people who are just looking at the link, the recorded version. You can't ask me questions, right? Because it's maybe another day. You can always ask me any questions. Email me your questions. So let me just also and I'll go back a step and just say thanks. It's been about 45 minutes, and that's a good amount of time to focus. It's hard to focus more than 45 minutes, and it's late for some people. But again, we just touched the surface, right? There's so many cool topics. And so if you go to masteringtennispsychology.com, you can get a free ebook. There's a sample section. There's 6 sections with videos, articles, and applied exercises. You can use the promo code if you want and take the course for half off. Again, you could just get the ebook. But that course is really in detail. So if you love this stuff and you want to become an expert in the mental game, I highly recommend taking this course. It's sponsored by the International Association of Tennis Psychology. And if you take the course, you'll get a certificate, and there's quizzes after every section, but they're not that hard. So I think you're going to pass. And the idea is that, you're just going to learn a lot there. And you can look at the videos, articles, and applied exercises for as long as you want. There's no time limit. So again, we just touched the surface on these 5 fundamentals: self-awareness, confidence, controlling your anxiety, staying focused, staying inspired to practice. Those are just basics, right, that we talked about today, a few. There's just so many other cool things that can help your game, can help you as a teacher. So again, go to the course, see what you think. Let me just say it was definitely a privilege and an honor for you to take this webinar, to spend your time with me. And I hope you learned a little bit. Help you become a better player and help your mental game. Again, all I can say is enjoy the journey, enjoy your tennis, and good night. This is Dr. Greg Steinberg.